Okay, we're live.
All right, folks. Well, my name is Paxton Delaney. I'm going to bring you the first two bullet points here in the legal issues. The first one being the copyright going on. Copyright, the definition of that is the exclusive right of a creator to exploit a literary, musical, or other artistic work, whether it is in the form of print, audio, video, or otherwise. A few things that copyright protects and does not protect. A few things that it protects is music, visual art, literature, and theater. A few things that it does not protect are ideas, government, work, logos or slogans, and facts and figures. Um, a few things that teachers could use in order to try and prevent this in their classroom. Some of the rules, just don't use something if you're not sure of it. If there is something that you really, really want to use, you could try and call the owner to obtain permission. There's nothing wrong with that. Worst thing they can tell you is no. Another thing is just create your own work. That way you don't have to worry about anything. Don't use anybody else's information. Also, in the classroom, just keep maybe on your computers, keep websites available for students to check out and look at check out different copyright issues. Another one, just keep hard copies right there in the classroom, just in case computers and all that good stuff aren't working in there for the students. The second bullet point I have was the fair use. It's a doctrine in the copyright law, section 107, that has been developed through numerous court cases. It states that the reproduction of another's work is quote-unquote fair when it is criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use works may also be quoted verbatim with the need for permission from or payment to the copyright holder. The four factors that go along with this are the purpose of use, whether it's commercial or nonprofit, the nature of the work, the amount of work that is used, and the effect of the use on the market. These four factors are used to determine if someone's work has violated the fair use policy.
So you take 16 minus 9.
Mine actually relates directly to yours, so I'm going to wait. I'm not going to make any comments because I'll just give away everything. Mine is kind of how to get around copyright, but I'll let Jessica and Amy make comments.
I was just thinking I thought it was interesting that I thought like a logo for something would be protected. Like I can't steal like Nike's logo or I don't know. That's the first company that came to my head. So I'm actually really surprised that you can't copyright your own logo. That anyone can steal your logo for their own purposes.
Yeah, that was one thing that really got me too, and slogans as well. I figured they were going to be.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I can just steal it for whatever
I
I want.
thought slogans were copyrighted until now.
No, when I was looking on that the website from Library Guides for Salisbury, that's what it gave me a list of these things that weren't protected. And that's what I was really surprised by.
What were the other ones that aren't protected other than slogans and logos?
I said ideas, government work, and facts and figures.
Yeah, those ones make sense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey kiddos, you're having a blast, ain't you?
Alright, I can start mine now. I have Creative Commons, which is an online organization that's nonprofit, so you don't have to pay or anything like that, and it's a way to get around copyrights, but not really, because the author of it has to give permission for Creative Commons. So the goal is to expand the range of creative works available for others to build upon legally and to share. So it's all legal, and what they have music, videos, writings, codes, like all of those things that Paxton said are copyrighted. And what happens is when you go on this website as an author, you can go into it and decide that you want to make your creative work public, and you can choose to, like, I only want someone to be using this for teaching, or I only want someone to be using this for a presentation or something else. But you can also go onto their public domain, and that means that all their works that they choose to be on the public domain, anyone can access. So it's just kind of a way to share your works with everyone and not have to go through the process of contacting the author and getting the permission to copyright. Instead, this website just kind of does that for you, and it's all legal because they have a license program on the website, and so that changes the all rights reserved that comes up on the copyright law, and it gives you the option to grant copyright permissions. And these licenses have 3 layers. So the first layer is all kind of lawyer terms. They call it the legal code layer, and say that it's not really good for normal people to read, but it's all kinds of terms that lawyers use and understand. So if someone wanted to sue you, they could look at that part and the lawyer would see that. And then the second layer they call like the normal people layer, the commons deed, and that's all things that we can read and understand about the copyrights and everything about their program and the licenses. And then the third layer is a machine layer, so it's like for laptops or computers or whatever, they can read that and understand it. So it has 3 different layers, and it's pretty cool because you can use that as a teacher. You can join this website and get your license and everything, and if you want to find different resources or like ways to present your material to students, you can use other people's things that they've put on there, and you get to do that easily through this website. So it's kind of helps you out with that, and not just teachers can use it, but really anyone.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that what you were saying about like the author can specify like only teachers can use it, or the I don't know other purposes you were saying. But I think that it's actually helpful because so if they do say it's just for teaching, you know that it's probably helpful. It's not going to be any inappropriate material, I guess is what I'm trying to say, relating to the topic.
That's true. When I saw that too, I was really surprised. It's like you can pick which domain that you want your work to be licensed in, and not so you can get to pick and choose if you're the author, which is nice. So you know also someone couldn't be using something that you created to add on to it and make it like inappropriate or something like that.
Now I have a question about that. So where would you find that in like the document? Where would you see what it's licensed for, and then how can you make sure that you're able to use it in the classroom and like make sure that you're citing it correctly and everything?
When you join and you sign up for your license, you say what you specify like what you're going to be using it for. So if I put teaching, then I'm only going to see things and that the author said they could be used for teaching, or unless you go on the public domain part, then there's a lot more stuff on there, because that's stuff that the author said, you know, anyone can see. You don't have to specify what you're using it for. So that's how you can tell.
And I like how you said it's divvied up into the different categories. Like you've got your Creative Commons attributions by, then you've got, your Creative Commons attribution, no derivatives, the share alikes, your non-commercial share alikes, then your non-commercial, no derivatives. I like how it's broken down like that, so that way you can specify how you want your work. Like you said, you know how it's going to be used.
Yeah. Can we go on to the next one?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, hold on just a moment, sorry.
It's okay. Oh, also something about the public domain is you don't need to go through the website and join to have a license. You could, we could just go on and look at the public domains without having to get the license from the website. So if you ever want to look for something, you can try going on that for one of your classes or anything like that.
That's cool.
Okay, are we ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the gender divide, which is basically throughout just in generally in technology, mathematics, and science fields, girls don't, for some reason, perform as well as males do, and they don't show as much interest in it. And it's been this has been observed for years. A lot of the articles I found date back to the early 2000s, but lately this is becoming less of a trend, but it's because we're actively trying to stop this from happening. We want it to be equitable in the technology field. So a lot of what I found was that the girls are not as much into technology because there were social stigmas about it, that girls are not good at math, that girls are not good at science. And so when the girls are surrounded by this, they lose their interest in technology. And a lot of times they start off with an interest, but then when they get into middle school, that's when it kind of starts to die down because of those social stigmas. So what the girls need to be able to succeed in technology as well as the boys is just strong female role models. Most teachers are women, so they need to show an active interest in these fields to get the girls interested. And then also, if you're a male teacher, you need to provide, examples of women in those fields and examples that show that it's actually okay to be a woman in the STEM field or to be a woman who's interested in technology. A lot of it, like I said, is all due to social stigma. There's not really a huge difference in the way girls' brains work or anything, which is what they initially thought. It's really just a social issue. Another thing that's important is for teachers to be informed about, these trends and how it looks in the classroom, and then find ways to get girls more engaged in those technology fields. I think a lot of it is just exposure to other women in the field to show that it is okay and that it actually is a good thing, and that you can be smart in the areas of science and technology and math and still be accepted as a woman, I guess. Any comments on that before I move on to the racial divide?
Yeah, that's just.
You can go.
You can go ahead, Amy.
Oh, okay. What I was going to say is I can definitely relate to that because my brother's in middle school right now, and on his robotics team, there's one girl and there's like 15 other guys. So it's definitely what you were saying is definitely, have these women role models say, it's okay to like science. It's not a bad thing. It's definitely, yeah. Well, since it's a practice run, it is.
I think just talking about your brother's middle school robotics team, if the teacher that took over and was kind of leading that team was a woman, I'm sure that would make a difference.
Yeah, I would totally agree because I think it's a man right now. It's like two dads who's of the team, but yeah, that would probably make a huge difference.
Yeah, I think
the coach is a girl.
So I guess us as women teachers, we should definitely, like you said, show more interest. But if there was something like that, like a program that involved that, if we wanted to take that on, it'd probably encourage more girls. And also, this kind of reminds me of Jessica when we had maths together, and one of the first assignments we had to do was draw a picture of a mathematician. And I know I drew a picture of a male. I didn't draw a male, and most of our class drew a male. It's just
that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a very large male class.
Yeah,
another thing I want to point out about that was that with the gender divide, it carries over into the careers that these girls choose. That there are so many males in dominating the STEM fields, but there's not very many women, and it's because that these stereotypes are kind of embedded into these children from a young age. So we need to start early, getting these children comfortable with science and technology, and be able to see these girls grow and continue to use it and not fall prey to that social stigma.
And give them opportunities, because I don't know about a lot of middle schools, but I'm sure a lot of them don't have robotics programs or science and tech programs. I mean, I don't really know, but at least where my brother goes to school, he doesn't. The only thing is the robotics. So I feel like giving girls the opportunity to be involved in these activities would definitely benefit as well.
Yeah, and there are. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jessica.
I was going to say there are foundations that you can look to that give resources for this. I know there's I think it's the Sally Ride Foundation, and she was the first woman
astronaut.
And she's also a teacher. Yeah.
Oh.
So she has this foundation that encourages girls to get involved in STEM. There's lots of different foundations and public organizations that help with this, that help give teachers resources for getting these girls involved. And there's things that can be used with the whole class, not just with the girls, but that they specifically get those girls interested by showing them strong women role models and showing them activities that are fun and engaging.
And it's like I think when you said back to the robotics program, with them getting like females in there to lead the whole thing instead of not just participating in it and helping out, but as get one of them to head the entire thing as opposed to having a male teacher. Let the females see that there's a female in a leadership position and not just helping out here or there with everybody, making their rounds around all the groups. They're taking control of the entire thing.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. I'm going to move on to the racial divide. Some of the ideas tie into each other, so we can continue talking about this at the same time. But the racial divide is also sometimes called the digital divide. But what it is showing that there's a divide between higher income and lower income students in their access to technology. Because obviously, if they're lower income, they can't afford those things at home. So there's less of a chance that they've had activities with these with different technologies, that they haven't been exposed to them, so that they lag behind in the different fields because they just haven't had that exposure. A lot of times this affects racially as well, just because of the de facto racial segregation that's in our country. It's not something that people are trying to keep these students down, but just the fact that they're lower income in general means that they haven't had the access. So one thing that one article I read did talk about how in colleges that are heavy on the technology use, that provide computer labs for their students, that have rentable technology like iPads and stuff like that, things that the students all have access to, that divide tends to go down, especially if they have classes on how to use these. For those students who haven't had that technology access before, they'll give them a class about how to use it, and then once they learn how to use it, they begin using it. And that divide is not completely gone, but it is lessened. Yeah, it's getting better. So I think if we could apply that to the elementary schools and give more access to those students who don't have the access at home, it could definitely help to give them classes about how to use the technology, and then also give them activities to do with the technology. And then once they have that access, they'll be more likely to use it. And they'll be more likely to become actually good at using it and know what they're doing when it comes to using technology such as iPads and smartphones and computers. And the one thing that everyone does seem to have access to, whether they're low income or high income, most people do have access to television. But that's about the only media form that is common throughout the groups. And I know just going out, to stores and things like that, I see a lot of technology use. Just like in the store where I work, I see a lot of access to like smartphones and tablets and things. And like, when you're in a waiting room or you're somewhere out in public, I see these kids playing games on their parents' iPad, just to keep them occupied. But the thing is, those lower income students can't afford that, so they don't get that access. They don't get to do that in their free time. They only get to do it at school, and then when they're at school, they're expected to do something with it. They're expected to research something. They're expected to use it for school, but they don't know how to use it because they've never used it before.
Yeah, love that. I've never heard of a school renting. How you said that you read something where the school rents out, because that would just, because mine is socioeconomic divide next, and something I thought that teachers could do for that is, send resources home. But I mean, if a teacher, you can't really send an iPad home as a teacher, but if the school decided to do that and allow students to rent and take things home, then I think that would make a huge difference in that. And I know my cousin who he's a freshman in high school. I saw him 2 days ago, and he told me that his high school just started an iPad program where every student in the school has an iPad, and they get to bring it home and everything, and it's theirs. And I mean, they give it back to the school at the end of the year for them to give to the next year's students. But I mean, that is a great way to get kids to be able to use technology who don't have the funds or means at home to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's definitely a great idea to be able to give those access to the students. Obviously, there's going to be some issues with that, and you have to be a school that has enough funding to get that one-to-one ratio of technology to student.
Yeah.
So it's going to be harder for lower-income schools, and then you still have that socioeconomic divide there. But
Yeah.
I think there's grants and things available, and just different community resources that you can utilize that can help with that. But it's going to be difficult, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, that's a problem, is that kids who are low SES and live in a poverty area, their schools are not as nice as an area that doesn't have a lot of poverty and has higher SES because of the taxes and things like that. So it's kind of like it's hard to do that, because if you're live in a bad area, it's hard to get your public school to be like top notch and have a lot of money and funds. So
I was thinking the constant use of whatever they can in the classroom, as opposed to, I mean, obviously it would be awesome if students could take them home with them, but even if they could just, in each class, try to incorporate the iPads as much as possible, even if they have the ones that are staying at the school all the time, but, you know, whether it's math, reading, science, social studies, any of the classes, just still trying to get some form of it onto the iPad, so that way the kids are getting the reps on there, because as long as they're getting the repetitions, then everything will start to click a little bit more for them.
Yeah, I mean, maybe even teaching just one lesson, like a 30-minute lesson on how to use the technology, so they can gain some of the skill. Because I mean, in the schools that I've been in placement, like all of them, even if they are, you know, poor income, they all still know how to use it. They're the really technologically advanced. Like they're all, like 5-year-olds know how to use this stuff more than I do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, even just having one lesson saying, okay, this is what you do, this is how you do it, I think they'll pick it up like that. I mean.
Oh yeah, this generation definitely has a leg up on it because they're so exposed to it. But some of them are not as exposed as others, and I think that's where the issue comes in. I think a lot of the older articles I read, it was a greater difference than it is now, because now that's more accessible, and some of the technology is more affordable. Like almost everybody has a home computer now. It might not be the most up-to-date thing, but at least they have that access. And most households have internet access too. And if you don't have internet access on a home computer, you probably have a smartphone that has some form of, you know, access to apps or games or something like that your child can play on.
Yeah, I know my mentor teacher that I was just in my placement with, she is very lucky, because she, you know, for a teacher especially, has a lot of money, and she actually bought her own Kindles, not Nooks, Kindles, those things, and she bought her own iPads for her classroom, and she uses some of the school iPads, but she bought some of her own iPads so that she has enough. I think she'll have enough so that a large group, not just like 2 students or 3 students, but a group of like 8 students could be all using iPads or Nooks. So she's actually, you know, that would be amazing, but not every teacher has the funds to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's awesome that she's able to do that.
Yeah.
That's at my placement, my teacher, she was somewhat lucky. The school itself had enough iPads that could go around for like 3 classes at a time, but she also had one of the only classrooms that had a smart board, and then she also had a classroom that held on to all the laptops. So every day she had, you know, 30-some-odd laptops in her class, and the only way other folks were getting them were to come in there and sign them out from her. So it was lucky for her class because they were available for them at all times. So they were able to use them a lot.
Yeah, that is really lucky, but then that kind of hurts the rest of the school. What if she's using them that day, you know?
Yeah.
And, at the placement I was at, they had them in the actual, they had them in the technology teacher's office. He would come around about once a week to each class, maybe sometimes twice a week, but he would teach STEM activities because a lot of the students didn't have time for actual science classes during the day, so the teachers would teach all the other subjects, and he would come once or twice a week for STEM.
That's awesome.
In his office, they had the laptops, and they could just sign them out as long as, you know, another teacher wasn't using them. I think they had a total of 4 laptop carts. For her class, it took 2 laptop carts to be able to give a laptop to each of her students, so that kind of hurt them a little bit. But the teacher next door did have her own set of laptops, which helped. So she could borrow them from her and only check out 1 laptop card if she needed to, as long as the other teacher wasn't using her laptops at the time. But going back to what you said about the Kindles and the Nooks, I was one of the articles I read did talk about how there's actually even a difference in the way the students use technology. This goes back to the gender divide. Apparently, the way the boys and girls process information on those electronic textbooks, like on the ebooks, the way they process the information is actually different. And so that one does go back to like a psychological thing, but I think that it's easy to overcome because as long as you know how what the differences are, you can actually go back and remedy the situation. I have to go back and look at the article to figure out, exactly what the difference was. But there was a slight difference, and I think that, things like that are a little harder to overcome just because that's not one of those social things that you can power through. It's one of those things that actually comes down to the way your brain is wired.
Yeah. Do you guys want to move on, or you?
I'm good.
Yep.
Yeah, that covers all of that. Did you finish with the socioeconomic, or was there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I still need to do that. So, yeah, I'm socioeconomic divide, and that is just about how students and families with a low SES are having a significantly harder time with success in their education. And I found it was difficult to find things about this, but I did find some stuff. Some of it relates to us with early childhood or elementary ed, but I did find some good stuff about high school. And actually, this one statistic for high school is saying that poor children in the top quartile on high school math scores have a 41% chance of finishing a bachelor's degree by their late 20s. And that's the same chance as students from the second lowest quartile in math scores who have a high socioeconomic status. So pretty much it goes on, there's more added to it, but I'm just not going to read the whole thing to you guys. It's pretty much just saying that these kids with the low SES and that have these top high scores on their high school math exams, like for Maryland it'd be MSA, they still aren't finishing their college, and just like their SES is that's how much it affects them. It's like even if they have amazing scores and they're really great, it's still not being enough, and that divide is still there. And I mean right off the bat when I read that, I thought, well, a student that comes from a high SES family, their family can support them through college, and a child or a student, high school student that goes into college with a low SES, their family may not be able to support them. They might get some, funds from the school, scholarships, but they're going to have a full-time job during school, which is extremely difficult, and they're going to have to do all this extra stuff to keep putting themselves through school. So even if they may be the smartest kid in their class, I mean, then they would get a lot of scholarships that would help, but you still have to pay for living and all of that. So it's just really affecting them. And then on the other end of the spectrum, going to early childhood, I read this article about school readiness and kids coming into kindergarten. And it says that the average cognitive scores of our nation's most affluent children are 60% higher than those of our poorest children before they enter kindergarten. And that definitely, the article was talking about how kids coming into kindergarten with a low SES are just so much further behind the kids with a high SES. And I was just thinking about, I've learned in my early childhood classes how reading to your children is so important, and it's easier for them to become a reader if they've been read to their whole life. They're more familiar. They watch you read the book. They know sentences go from left to right. They know what words sound like. They know how sentences go, and books and everything, and how text is written. And it helps them so much later when they're learning how to read and write, if their parents are literate and if their parents are reading to them. And a lot of kids at home, their parents have resources for them like iPad or on their phone. They could be playing, they're games, but a lot of games for kids on those are educational, even though I don't like kids playing games on their parents' phone to keep them distracted. A lot of them are educational and have some sort of use, and kids from a low SES, they just don't have all the resources at home, and it just completely affects them in their education.
One thing to combat the SES was the link that Dr. Sessom sent us about the Raspberry Pi. So I did a little more research on that, and it's 25 pounds because it's from Britain, but but in like reality it's like $38, and that's like it's used for programming. It's like a tiny credit card sized computer where you just like plug in a keyboard and a mouse into like some monitor. It could be a computer monitor, it could be
Amy?
a tab, that could be extra. But
Yeah, we just lost you in the middle of that.
Yeah, you froze a little bit, so we lost what you were saying at the end there.
oh, I'll just say it again. Okay, so the Raspberry Pi link that Dr. Sessom sent us was actually really useful for, I don't know if it's the socioeconomic or the digital divide, but it's about a $38, credit card size computer that kids, all you need to do is plug in a keyboard and a mouse and plug it into any, tablet or computer or TV screen, and they can use it as a computer. They can research, they can search the internet, they can actually program on this little thing, so that can easily be a way to enhance their technology skills, I guess.
Yeah, I've never heard of that, and I didn't have a chance to look at that, but I feel like if more people knew about that, and that could be a good chance for kids with low SES and low funds in their family to get some of that at home.
And another thing about that Raspberry Pi is that it not only it's not just like an iPad. You actually are the programmer with that, and you can use it for so many different uses. It was really great because I know nothing about programming, but I feel like that could teach me. It's it could teach. It's a very useful teaching tool, especially if you want to get students more interested in those technology fields, which is really growing right now and could really be beneficial for those students to have access to that. And to be able to go into those fields when they decide, when they're in college and they decide, what do I want to do with my life? They can go into programming because they have that background now. And, I wouldn't be able to do that. I know nothing.
And that's like we were talking about going to college and figuring out what they were going to do. It's like some of them, they get an understanding early that they can tell they understand how much college is going to cost, and they see maybe either both their parents or if they're just with a single parent struggling, constantly working, that they may not be able to afford college. So they'll just get down to the dumps right then and there and not try as hard because they know they already rule college out of the future, and they understand it's going to be, all right, get through elementary school, hopefully get through high school, and then just find a job and figure out what to do right from there.
Yeah, I've never thought about that, but that's a really good point. Like they don't have self-esteem in themselves for college because they just think it's out of the question for them.
Mm-hmm. And they don't really understand the fact of getting a scholarship. Like, I mean, you may have like male students who understand a sports scholarship just because they see, they see all these athletes and they understand how they've gotten to college and whatnot, but not understand like an actual scholarship due to good grades. Like obviously, you're doing real well. You've gotten straight A's your whole college, your whole school career. All right, here's a scholarship for that. Some kids may not get a grasp on that right then.
Yeah.
A lot of times I think that's where a school guidance counselor can really help you and really get, because they can talk to the students about, how to get those scholarships and how to be able to go to school to afford this, because I know it is a really hard struggle. I mean, definitely for me, I don't have much family support monetarily to be able to go to this, not because they don't want to help me, but because they can't. And so a lot of times, you do need that full-time job while you're in college. Like she said about the socioeconomic divide, it is really tough going to college these days. But I feel like with all of the community resources, we should be able to get these kids there. We just have to know what the resources are and be able to access them.
Mm-hmm. And make sure they understand how to access them as well.
Yeah, that too, definitely.
Yeah, and as teachers, I thought when I was going through this, I thought of some tips for us for when kids come into our classrooms that need us more because of their low SES. And firstly would be identifying them and knowing which students and making sure that you help them out more because I think with teaching fair is everyone getting what they need to succeed, not everyone getting the same thing, because kids who have all these resources at home, they don't need you to send resources home with them, but if you know which kids in your class have a low SES, you can send resources home for them for their assignments, you can send resources home for their parents. Maybe their parents really want to learn and help them more. Some parents, don't care, which is sad, but some really do. And not to assume that every child has materials that you may think, oh, they'll have scissors, but they might not have scissors at home. Just to remember not to assume things and to just not require anything that, or assign anything that requires expensive materials or anything like that. And I just think those things, if teachers remember those, and it'll help the kids who are falling through those cracks of the socioeconomic divide.
I feel like, yeah, it would be really helpful to maybe have, like, some resources, like, at the back of your classroom for students to borrow whenever they need to. Obviously, you can't do that with the technology, but with things like, you know, crayons, markers, paper, stuff like that, you can definitely have that available for those students that need it, and it would be discreet. They could, you know, at the end of the day, go over their homework. They know they need this, so they just go and take it off your shelf and, you know, or have them sign it out, you know, like they need a book or something like that. Just have them sign it out and, you know, bring it back. But I think that would definitely be helpful for some of those students. But obviously you can't do that with every single resource. It has, you know, there's a limit to what you can do. But to be able to do that with some things would definitely be a huge help.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, are you ready to move on to the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
Amy's
so
been waiting patiently.
So I focus on social issues, and obviously bullying is a big deal, but because technology is becoming so prevalent in schools in the younger generations, cyberbullying has become more prevalent in schools. And so the National Center for Education Statistics did the same study in 2009 and in 2011, and found that in 2009 there was 6% of students being cyberbullied, and that doesn't seem like a lot, but it's about, you know, a million and a half students that year, and then it actually increased 3% to about 2,200,000, something like that. So obviously it's, you know, growing, which obviously isn't a good number. So we should, as teachers, we should be trying to combat that. And also, cyberbullying is different than regular bullying because it can happen anytime, anywhere. It's not in person anymore. You can do it, you know, on your tablet, on your phone. You don't have to do face-to-face. And a lot of people probably feel more confident doing it anonymously because the person won't know, oh, this person's saying something about me. They can't confront me because I'm doing it over the internet. And also, after it's out there, it's pretty hard to get it back. And what am I going to say? Oh, and it's distributed to a wide variety of audiences. It's hard to delete them. And basically, as teachers, we can not fix it, but try to lessen the numbers by, you know, providing a safe environment in the classroom, making sure if you see bullying, you know, stop it immediately, talk to the people involved, and, you know, try to stop the behavior. And also even just making a lesson out of it, saying, you know, how to teach them to deal with bullies. You know, walk away, find an adult, tell them there's always a solution for help. I mean, you might not end it right then and there, but there's always some way to get help from your bullying. And some other, forgot to mention the effects of cyberbullying. They're pretty similar to regular bullying, but students, you know, they start to skip school, they use drugs and alcohol more often, they drop out of school sometimes. And if it gets bad enough, there is suicide, which isn't a good thing to be thinking about, but it is possible. It does happen. Their grades are lower. They have lower self-esteem. The bullying might even carry over into in-person bullying. So to protect against the cyberbullying, at least in the school sense, there's a thing called AUP, which is an acceptable use policy, and they are guidelines for appropriate technology use. They're a written agreement signed by the students and their parents and the teachers, and it outlines, you know, what's acceptable to use on, like, what websites are acceptable to use on the computers and what you can post and all those things. And every AUP has certain sections. There's an introduction and a purpose to say, you know, what policies need, why it's needed, its goals, and its processes of developing the policy. And then there's an acceptable section and it details what actions are acceptable to use on the computers, devices at schools. And then there's a non-acceptable section, so certain things you're not allowed to do while on the school's technology. And then there's a violation/consequence section, which details about how things are going to be handled if you do violate the rules. And in the Google Doc, I do have examples from certain counties. And as teachers, to, like I said, fix this, can make students more proactive, not to be silent about bullies, to try to not stand up for themselves, you know, with their fists, but use their words, walk away, find help. And to avoid the AUP issue, just make sure the parents do sign it and that their child and the parent do know, you know, what is expected of them when they're using the technology.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like go ahead.
Okay. I'm just thinking like how much teachers and schools like focus on bullying, and I know in every placement I've been in we've talked about bullying. A year ago when I was in Del Mar, the whole school had a bullying week, and like, but I think that schools and teachers forget about cyberbullying, and when you're talking about bullying you should also focus just as much on that, because it is becoming like growing and sadly becoming such a big part of our society that we need not only need to focus on in-person face-to-face bullying, but focus more on cyberbullying, and hopefully some authors will make some children's books about cyberbullying or something, because there's so many out there about bullying, and that would really help, I know, with younger kids. But I feel like cyberbullying, a kindergarten or first grader is probably not going to happen to them, so it is kind of older kids. So, but I think that teachers just need to remember that part of bullying, and it's not just when you're in school, and it goes at home too.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea. And then what you were saying about the AUPs, I know a lot of schools have a filter, or I know like the whole county has a filter where certain websites can't even be accessed from the school computers.
Right.
But I know when you get to
I know Facebook and YouTube, those are the only two main that I know. Like pretty much all social media sites and are like you can't access them.
Yeah, you can't access social media. And I think that does help in preventing it. But you have to remember that the older grades know how to get around it.
And they have
when I was in high school, there were kids who knew proxies to get around the social media blocks, and could get on whatever website they wanted pretty much. And it was definitely it kind of becomes a bigger issue then, because you're not protecting them with this policy, because you can't possibly catch everyone. You can catch some of them, but you can't possibly catch everyone. And a lot of them, I feel, don't realize why it's blocked. And that needs to be, something that you focus on. Like, it's blocked for these reasons. And maybe then they'll be more apt to listen to the rules because they'll make more sense to them.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of kids just think it's blocked because they want to control us and tell us what to do. But no, it's blocked for, like you said, a reason. I'm sure if that was made more aware, maybe people would understand it more and not just think, oh, the school's just trying to control us.
Yeah, definitely.
Like I said, once it gets on like the on Facebook or any of the other social media, everybody's knowing what somebody said about you. Like, it's not just somebody going up to you and saying something bad to you, and obviously it hurts you yourself, but it could go on just between you and that one person. But once it gets on Facebook or any other ones, Twitter or anything like that, then even if it's not somebody else, bullying you, somebody's always coming up to you and asking you about it, bringing it back up. So you got to deal with it all over again. Like, oh, so-and-so said this about you. Oh, what about this? What do you think about this? It's like they constantly have to go through it with everybody instead of just having to deal with it with one person that's bullying them.
Not only that, but it provides a better way for people to actually gang up on them instead of just one student.
That's what I was just thinking. Yeah,
everyone does.
If you make a post, 50 people could comment on it, and in school, I don't think 50 people are going to come up to one person.
No.
So, saying the same thing over and over.
Yeah, and a lot of that has to do with also the anonymity. I can't even say that word. Just the fact that online, you're not exactly anonymous, but you don't have to face that person when you say these things.
Yep.
So you'll say things you wouldn't say to them in person. And I think a lot of that's why cyberbullying is becoming such a big thing, is because kids are not afraid to say things like that online. In person, they would never think to say something like that. They would never be so rude and so mean to other students, but they can do that online, and it makes it so much easier. And a lot of kids probably don't even realize they're doing it.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, like you said, when they're not going to come up to them and say it to their face because they don't want to see the pain that they're causing. If they sit there and just text it or tweet it or anything, they don't see how hurtful the person is when they're receiving it. It's just, that's the just lack of empathy. I think that younger students have. They don't understand that the hurt that they're causing the other person.
Yeah.
And the data that I found, like they said on the website, that it may not be accurate because technology is always changing. They can't get the exact statistics of how many people were cyberbullied because numbers are always changing. So, and again, that was only from 2011. So think of how much it's grown in just the past 4 years. And I think it's probably more like 15, 20% now.
So, especially with the
way, especially with the way social media is expanding, and more students, younger and younger, are having access to that.
The 11-year-olds on Facebook.
Yeah.
Yeah. hmm
Right.
Are we all good?
Well,
I
I
think
guess
so.
that's it.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to cover before I stop the broadcast?
I don't
Um,
think so.
I think I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Stopping in
Bye,
three.
guys.
Bye. In 3, 2, 1.